Welcome to the Family Mess Podcast. I'm your host, Ian, and I don't have a co-host today, so we're going to go right into the second episode of the Rebirth of the Soul series. In this episode, I'm going to talk about my second day in Sedona, Arizona, the experience I had with the different instructors, and hopefully you guys will get something out of it. So I believe I ended up explaining the first day, and it was an experience that I just, thinking about it now, I've never felt such pain, emotional, spiritual pain in my entire life in that first day. So I think I understand why they didn't have anything other than that one event on the first day. So the second day, I began my meetings with meeting an instructor in the morning. It was an older lady. And I have to say, most of my instructors were all older senior citizens, probably in their late 60s, 70s, even older. And they're all women. I had one man. And I realized on this morning, they started things very easy for me. I don't know if that was done purposely, but I met a lady and we were supposed to go on like this nature walk. And the idea of the nature walk was to identify the items that were brought up the day before in the meeting. The items that triggered me, the items that I felt or that I knew I suffered from, we actually were trying to give them a name, to name the pain that I was feeling. I didn't know what this was. I went with it. You know, I had nothing to lose. So as the lady's speaking with me on the trail, it's kind of a way to go back in your past, but it's a way to understand what you're feeling and why you're feeling that way. And the lady spoke with such grace and peace as she was speaking with me. And it was obvious I was hurting as I was trying to explain myself. But I continued to do it anyway. I continued to talk to her. And the entire time she said, don't give up. God loves you. And I almost didn't believe it, but as she said it, I felt it. I felt more love from her, from wherever I was at the time. And the thing about this particular area in Arizona is that depending on where you're at, they have high concentrations of energy. They call it vortexes, but it's actually high concentrations of the Earth's magnetic field. And depending on who you are and what's happening, as you enter the magnetic field, these high concentration of energy, things happen to you. I almost can't explain, but something was happening to me. I almost can't put in the words, but something was changing or moving inside. So as we continued this nature walk, I noticed that as we walked more and I began to explain myself more, I began to express my feelings, that I actually began to feel better and more connected to whatever it is I was connecting to. I felt it a little closer. But I was telling her, religion is the reason why I felt guilty about everything in my life. Just growing up in the church, never really enjoying life because in the back of my head, I knew that I couldn't disappoint God. And because I couldn't disappoint God, I had to make sure that I couldn't have too much fun. I couldn't really enjoy myself, have too much fun in life. I was always worried about the consequences of my actions, never really enjoying anything and never truly being happy. So I told her, I questioned the last couple of months. I was questioning everything about me, God, myself, who I was, and I just didn't want to go back to church, or I wanted to just denounce Christianity altogether. I was done with it. I just wanted out. I wanted nothing. I wanted nobody to tell me what to do with my life except God himself. I wanted nothing from anybody. But then she stopped me and she looked me in the face and she said, Ian, you're a very powerful person. Your spirit is extremely powerful, but I know you're feeling a lot of hurt, but the same church that you left, or that Christianity that you left, is what you were raised with. Even though I know you say you don't like it, it's still a part of you. Instead of denouncing it, is there a way you can utilize what you're learning here to help people? And when she said that, I never thought about that. I was just in my own feelings again, and I never thought about using what I'm learning to help people in the church, because they don't teach us this in church. They don't teach us to meditate in church. They don't teach us to take time for ourselves. All they really teach is to read the Bible, read the verses, pray on the verses, and believe everything the verses are saying. But you rarely hear pastors tell you to go beyond the verses, find out where the verses came from, who really wrote the verses, the different interpretations, really dig into what we're reading and knowing what the words came from and what they mean. Churches don't teach that. They don't teach any of that. But at the same time, I almost think that most people don't want to know the truth about their own Bible they're reading. They prefer to read and believe and to stay in that portion of their life that way. Don't ever change. Don't ever question anything that it's saying. But I think questioning it is why we're human and why God made us, is to question everything. Question everything. Question God. Thank God. Laugh with God. Have this relationship with God that no one else can take from you. Worship God in your own way, whatever it is. And as I started talking to this lady, I realized that I do love God, but I just want to experience Him my own way. I don't want people telling me what to do. So as we continued to walk on this trail in the mountains, it became very evident that I was really wanting to stay at this place. And her voice is very soothing, and she always made me feel comfortable no matter what. And she always asked a lot of questions. How are you feeling? And as we were drinking water, she always wanted to know, what are you thinking? They always want to know what you're thinking. And a lot of times I really wasn't thinking about anything. I just wanted to experience what I was experiencing, and that's it. I didn't want to go anywhere else in my mind. I just wanted to experience what God wanted me to experience. Whatever it was, I wanted it. And we went and we looked out on the mountain over the entire valley, and it was just so beautiful. And I didn't want to leave it. Just seeing the beauty of God's world at that place changes you. I don't know how to put in the words, but towards the end of our trip, she took me to the mountain and we did like a ritual where I forgot what the instrument was called, but I don't know, it was a drum where she played it wasn't a flute. And she did a chant. I don't know if it was a bad chant, whatever it was, but I just went with it. I didn't feel anything bad. I went with it. And at the end, she's like, Jesus really loves you. And I looked at her and I'm like, yeah, He does. I looked at her and I was like, yeah, He does. And as we walked back to the trail, I realized that this person that they assigned to me was a very peaceful and loving soul. I just thank her for going on the adventure with me and just making me feel loved. And I think love is what I was looking for at this time, and finding it, and then finding it and just hearing it and experiencing and feeling it is just something that I've never felt my entire life. And I think that's what I was searching for, is just real love, someone to love me. I know I'm married and I have kids and, they love, but it's something deeper. And I really thanked her for that. And my soul thanks her for that. And I told her I loved her. I don't really tell a lot of people I love them, but she touched a part of my heart that I think has never been touched before, and I told her I really appreciate that. So that was the first session for the day, and after we were done with the session, I took some time, an hour or two, and decided to have lunch by myself at a vegan place. And it was at this vegan place where I was sitting down waiting for a meal, and there was an older couple, and the lady had, I don't know if she walked with a limp, but it was something wrong with her legs or something. She couldn't walk straight, but I remember looking over at her and just thinking, okay, she's got a little bit of a disability, but nothing else. And I sat down, and she just started looking at me. And I tried not to look at her, but she looked at me and she's like, oh, hey, well, what are you doing here? And I told her, I'm like, oh, I'm just here for a retreat for a couple of days. And she's like, oh, well, where? And I told her, I'm like, oh, the Sedona place, Sedona Soul Adventures. That's where I'm going to do a retreat for myself for a couple of days. She goes, oh, I have friends that work there, it's a really great place. And I said, yes, it is. And then she just kept looking at me. I don't know why this lady looked at me, and she goes, do you know this person, Joe Dispenza? And I said, yeah, I've been reading a couple of his books. And the guy and her husband spoke up and said, isn't he great? I'm like, yeah, it's really good to view the world and we think about our world, and anything that we want, we can get with the power of our minds. I said, I believe it 100%. But then she looked at me and she goes, you're an extremely powerful soul. And I'm like, huh? This is this old white lady saying this. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And she goes, no, your soul, you give off a lot of powerful energy. And she tells me, she tells me to come over to her and sit down. So I come over and sit down, and she looks me in the face. And as I look up in her eyes, the one thing I notice with a lot of people in this town is they like to look you in the eyes. And of course, looking me in the eyes is very vulnerable for a lot of people. So I didn't look at her at first, but then I looked at her in the eyes, and her eyes just showed pure love. And I just couldn't stop looking. I said, no. I said, yes. And she goes, I don't know you, but you're a very powerful soul, and I think you're going to do great things. Hold on a second, I got something for you. And then she goes into her purse and gives me this essential oil, and she puts some in my hand, and she tells me to rub my hands together and just smell the oil, and I did. And she goes, just do this every other day, it'll make you feel so much better. I'm like, well, thank you. Thank you very much. And she goes, no, thank you for allowing me to talk to you and just experience you. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? So that pretty much ended the first session of the day. I didn't know what to expect. Things were definitely changing in my life, but that was session 1. And the next part of this recording will go into, I guess, session 2, which is the breathing exercise. And I'll continue that after this break. Thanks.